So you've finally been through all the modules of this tracking section, and this is the most important video of the whole series here, or possibly apart from the first video where you download the spreadsheet. This is where it all comes together. I'm really excited to be sharing this with you now. So we've gone through tracking all those 5 stages of the new, what we call the new patient experience, okay? And you've managed to get the diagnostic image that we've been talking about, those numbers where you can see the weak points and the strong points and what needs to be worked on, okay? So let's just go through that in summary. We've looked at the new patient messages which are coming through, and you can see on this picture here as well. So what you should be setting each week is a target of what you want to achieve. So you know that if you're above target or below target. I like that target to be my all-time record. So if my record is in this example was 74 new patient messages that week, I would say that this week, I'm beating my record, got 78, and next week's number target is going to be 78. That is the number of new patient messages or new patient leads that I'm going to try to achieve. Then we can move on to calls, and the great thing is you move through these stages, you can look at something what we call conversion points. And you see here that the conversion point between messages to calls is 50%, and the target here at the bottom is 50%. And there's been more calls than what was actually predicted for that week, which is great. It means the clinic is doing great things moving forward. And the reason why we look at this conversion point is simply because many patients who message should and do move on to a call, because on a call you are able to really find out, if that patient is the right patient for your clinic, and if you are the right clinic for that patient, vice versa. On the call you can find out so much more than you can just simply through a message. And that the message stage with patients is usually a lot colder, and then it goes warmer as the patient gets closer to the consultation session. So an important number, but of course not as important as this, the call to consultation booking number, which is a real important conversion point to look at. If your calls and your messages are being handled well, this conversion point should be high. And obviously you can see from this image that the conversion point is relatively low against the target. So more work needs to be done to make sure that patients on the call are converting into diagnostic or consultation sessions. Then we're going along even further into patients who book treatment. And that's what we're here for. That's what brings in the money. We're looking at the conversion ratio from consultations to treatments. And let's have a look at this example as well. So this example, the conversion ratio is lower than expected. So the consultation session is probably not being handled at the standard which it was before, and that needs to be fixed so that the ratio gets even higher. Okay. And then the last thing here to look at is the number of reviews which are coming in. So if the number of reviews from 7 patients is actually 2, a lot more reviews could obviously have been collected if the patient journey was great and it was a wow experience and the patients want to talk about it. That review status should be a lot higher. Are they meeting target? Yes, they are, exactly. So that was their predicted target, and things are going well. Super. So all these numbers, it's like you can sit now at the end of the day or perhaps the week, trying to do this monthly, try to do this on a weekly basis, weekly changes to keep your team active, to keep changes happening rapidly so that those patient numbers can go up and up and up. You can look at this at the end of the week like you're on the dashboard of an airplane or in a starship, rocket center. You're controlling all the metrics. Look at the metrics of your clinic and see what can be improved, because this is the key thing. Improving the conversion point of these numbers will probably bring you more new patients than any other thing you were doing right now. And we like to think of this in the Clinic Boost method as a leaking pipe. There are holes along this journey where patients are leaking or disappearing and either not going ahead with treatment or more likely going to another clinic instead of you. And we want to make those leaks as least as possible as the patient moves through the journey. as less leaks as possible to make sure that any lead which comes in and any marketing which you're doing is highly effective and not lost. Clinics, after going through this process have actually cancelled, in many cases, their whole marketing budget. They were enough to live from referrals and their own lists, which we'll talk about later, of course, in the Clinic Boost method. But these things will make a huge, huge difference. And for most clinics, as you know, there are only two ways to reach new patients. That is either through doing marketing or improving the patient experience journey, which we've just done through. And this is easier, quicker, but most clinics do not do it. They focus on simply paying for marketing instead. Such a sad thing to know. At the end of the week, when you're looking at the numbers, so we're looking at what worked, what didn't, what did you learn or your team learn during this week, and what will you do different next week to improve those numbers. And you will set targets in this sheet that you can work towards achieving and motivate your team to achieving each week and put those targets, of course, higher and higher as their skills increase of bringing the patients through the new patient experience. And there are some power questions, I like to call them. Let me just move that there. Power questions that we encourage clinics to ask at the end of every week, apart from what I already mentioned, which is a good, let's go backwards, sorry, which is what worked, what didn't, what learned, what different. This also, by the way, side note, works for personal weekly reviews as well. If you look at your past week of life, look at what worked, what didn't, what did you learn, what can you do different the next week. It works for personal things as well as business, for fitness, for finances, for your family relationships, but that's another project. Okay, here we're talking about clinics, so let's get back to that. Patient leads. So how can we make sure the increasing number of preferred patients know about our clinic? How can they message us more in the next week that's going to come? Okay. How can we make sure that more preferred patients actually engage in a conversation with our clinic? Because it is the conversations that really do bring many more patients directly to consultations than messages themselves. Okay. The consultations. How can we ensure this week that more patients will opt for our preferred treatments in our clinic instead of with the competitor clinic? How can then for the stage 4, how can we ensure that a consistent, higher standard patient experience as we grow? So the treat stage, how we want to, of course, ensure that more patients having treatment with us, but that experience is memorable. That's the key word. If it's memorable, or remarkable, they're going to make remarks about it. They're going to tell other people about it, and it's much easier to get a review or a recommendation or a referral from that patient. And how can we make sure, the last part here, stage 5, how can we make sure that the maximum number of patients refer our clinic to others, or in this stage, at least leave a review, make a video testimonial or photo testimonial, okay? These numbers are your own benchmarks, and you can track your whole progress with your clinic over each week and with your team by simply asking these questions at the end of every single week or at the start of every week, deciding on just the other idea is deciding just one action which you can do to improve just one of those stages. Pick the weakest stage, decide on one action that you can do to improve that stage and ask those questions. Do this every week, track your progress with the conversion points and the numbers, and you are making evidence-based decisions, easy decisions on what to do next. The big question is, what to actually do, what actions to take, what can you actually do to improve the conversion so that more patients who send messages, so that you get more messages, so that more patients who write messages end up on calls, that more calls end up on consultations, that more consultations end up in treatment sessions, and that more patients who are having treatments actually leave reviews and go on to recommend your clinic to their family and friends. And that is exactly, in a way, what the Clinic Boost method is about. We have best practices and strategies and training actually, really, I'm not joking here, but hundreds and hundreds of ideas that you can try out to improve those stages. And they're not just, how do I say, ideas. These are best practices taken from the world's best clinics that have fantastic conversion points between these stages. We know what works and what doesn't, and we're also always updating it, tweaking it based on the data that's coming in from all the other clinics that we're working with currently in the world. So if you'd like to know more about this program, please do let us know. We look forward to you now making sure to speak to you on the strategy call to give you some ideas. What would we do based on our experience and our knowledge of working with clinics? What would we do to improve your numbers once you've collected them? Okay, so speak soon personally, and I hope you've enjoyed the Clinic Boost tracking module.